welcome, thank you for coming again to the wonderful Southern California Writers Group Association. We've been in association since 1981, and the oldest one in the county, and certainly the only one where you sit and have a wonderful meal together.
I have the privilege of introducing our speaker today. I heard her speak and have met her, read her book. It's amazing. And the fact that anybody can not only write a book in English, but can write a book in English as English being her second language is amazing. So I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Cristina LePort, who was born in Bologna, Italy. She attended medical school at the University of Bologna and then completed her medical training at Long Island College Hospital in Brooklyn and at the University of California, Los Angeles. She's board certified in internal medicine and cardiovascular diseases and has been practicing medicine for more than 30 years, although it looks like more than 10. No more than 10. In addition to her other accomplishments, Cristina is the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Genescient, a biotech company devoted to genetic research on aging and the amelioration of chronic diseases. Medicine and fiction are her twin passions, and she's absolutely thrilled to be able to share her medical thrillers with the world. And today she's going to be talking about writing from the subconscious. So we're trying to do this in high-tech fashion. We're going to all be patient, see how this goes. And I'm pleased to turn the mic over to Dr. Cristina LePort.
A while ago, my editor sent me 55 pages of notes about my book. That's beside editing the book. So on the first page it said, quote, "What stands out to me is your innate grasp of narrative structure. This is a novel that knows that narrative is about cause and effect, each beat leading inevitably to the next. It's for that reason that this story, unusual for a draft, never seems to stall or slow. From the inciting incident on, it builds organically and consistently, and when we reach the climax, it feels like the climax that it is. There is never a question how we got there, and it's an engaging journey all the way through." Wow, I mean, who needs editing? Now, I'm not telling you what the other 54 pages said, because it's kind of a little embarrassing and really not on the point of this talk. But when I read that first page, I knew that no matter what the other 54 pages held, I could fix it. Because the problem is, if I didn't have that innate grasp of narrative structure, which is really what we call inspiration, I couldn't write a novel. But there was a word that really bugged me, the word innate. There was something wrong there, because I did not feel the need to get down to my knees and thank God that I was born lucky. I actually felt the need to pick up the phone and call my editor and said, you know, it's not innate. It took me 15 to 20 years to get it. I'm still learning it now. Now, I'm going to make the same statement to you today, and I know that probably many of you will disagree, and or at least will find this very controversial. I know that because I posted one sentence of this talk on Facebook, and I got a barrage of disagreements and threats. So, in any case, not really a big threat, but that I was crazy and that kind of thing. So, today I'm going to make the same statement. The ability to write with inspiration, it's not innate. It can be learned. I'm still learning it now. I learn a lot just preparing for this talk. And today I'm going to try to tell you what is my understanding of it. And I have to make a disclaimer right now that everything I'm telling you I learned from The Art of Fiction by Ayn Rand. That's a book I read, and that's what inspired me to begin to write more than 15 years ago. So to begin with, let's just think of something simple. A sunrise. Now you want to write about a sunrise. You know what it is. You see many of them. You know the components, and you know the words. Now, just about this sunrise, there is a lot of knowledge going into it. And this is all automatic to you, but it wasn't automatic all along. I know that because when I came from Italy, I had to learn English. Try to learn a foreign language and try to see how long and how much practice it takes for you to describe a sunrise in French. You're going to just, all the English word will come to you. And after a long, long time of practice, you're going to automatically describe it in French. But you would never say that this was innate. It's a skill that you have to learn with practice. Now let's say that you want to describe the sunrise as with a mood, of some mood, right? Now all of a sudden it becomes much more complicated. Now you got to know what cheerful means, what ominous means. You have to look for the words and the metaphors that convey that mood. Ask yourself how much knowledge goes into all this. Now if you had to consciously select every word, it would take forever. You'll be paralyzed. And this is just a simple sunrise. I mean, we're not talking about a novel. So when to write, you have to call on stored knowledge, which one time was conscious, but now has become so automatic that it's unconscious. And it just like comes to you now. You know, you tell your subconscious, hey, I need to describe a sunrise and I need to convey a certain mood, and the words just come to you. That's why it seems like it's just a gift from God. So I'm going to need the first slide. So the conscious mind has a limited screen of vision, as you can see. Right now, I hope you're just focusing on this talk. You're not thinking about your work, you're not thinking about your family or the rest of your knowledge. But they're somewhere, they're in your subconscious. So when you do not hold in your subconscious, when you do not hold in your conscious mind, is your subconscious. As you can see, is the majority of your knowledge. And you need this majority of your knowledge in the subconscious to understand new knowledge, and also to understand, what you're thinking about consciously. For example, a baby could not understand this lecture because he wouldn't have all the context. He wouldn't have enough accumulated subconscious knowledge. Next. Next. So what is the relationship between conscious and subconscious mind applied to writing? This relationship is really what brings about inspiration. And what is inspiration? Inspiration is when you write something and it just comes to you. It just comes out well, without you thinking. It's like a gift from God, But what if it isn't a gift from God? What if you could find out where it comes from and why it happens? And then you could actually learn how to make it happen when you need it, because it doesn't really happen as often as we like. Writer who thinks that it just either you have it or you don't, they're not too good at introspection. So they do this, they can do this, they can write some, instinctively for some time. But unless you really know where it comes from, pretty soon you could run out of inspiration. And you can see, some people write bestsellers and then they start writing, not too good book, not too well as they did to begin with. Now, some writer thinks that if you start thinking about this, it kind of ruins your inspiration. But it's really the contrary. The more you understand about where inspirations come from, the more you fuel your inspiration. And it's like putting fuel in the car. And so then you never run out of material if you actually put fuel in your inspiration car. Now, if you don't know what the process is, you always doubt yourself. Even if you're doing well now, you never know that you can make it happen again in the future. So I need, next, like this. So inspiration in writing, and this is a mouthful, but we're going to spend the rest of the hour talking about this, so don't worry. is your subconscious summing up your premises according to the purpose you have set yourself. The subconscious is feeding you the information that you need from all your knowledge that you have accumulated. That's what I mean by premises, the knowledge that's packed into your subconscious. It is doing that according to that purpose that you give yourself, the purpose of your novel, the purpose of your paragraphs, the purpose of your chapters. So it expands to all parts of the writing process. And the purpose is the orders that you give to your subconscious. Like, I need to describe a cheerful sunrise, where the subconscious goes to work and it sorts through what you have accumulated in your subconscious, and it gives you the words. But in order to make the inspiration happen next, you have to consciously work with your subconscious. You have to supply your subconscious with what it needs for you then to retrieve what you need when you need inspiration. And this is the most difficult part, but it's also the most interesting part of writing. You have to write inspirationally, like we said. You can't think of every word, right? So don't worry about anything. When you write, you just let your inspiration inspire you. And you write, and you don't edit yourself. Just let it come out. But later, if somebody asks you, why did you write this? You should be able to analyze yourself, introspect, and tell why you wrote that. And that is very important that you get to that point, because that's the only way that you're going to know how to fuel your subconscious. And that's the way you can edit yourself. Now, how do we go about acquiring the necessary knowledge and store it in our subconscious so it's ready when you need it? Well, one way to start is to analyze what you wrote and see what you like and what you don't like, and ask yourself why. Because if you do that, then you're going to find out what your premises are, what's stored in your subconscious, and that is very important to know. Next. So what is a premise? A premise is some conclusion that you achieved in the past and now you forgot how you got to it, and it's just stored in your subconscious. So to control your inspiration, you have to become conscious of your premises. Next, your philosophical premises and your literary premises. And we're going to take one at a time. Next. So the philosophical premises are all the answers to the big question that most people don't think about. Next. You do next several times. So what is reality? What do you think about reality, consciousness, the relationship of the man to the universe? Is the universe benign, malevolent to you, or is it neutral? And because the consequence is there cause and effect, and more important, do you have free will, or you're just doomed and determined and you can't choose, your fate or your actions? And it's very important to know, because whether you like it or not, your subconscious will feed you stories, characters, and actions according to your philosophical premises, whether you know what they are or not. So you may as well introspect and figure out a little bit about them, so then you have more control of what your subconscious gives you. And you just have to introspect, because the wrong philosophical premises can actually hinder your inspiration, hinder your writing. And you may keep them, compartmentalized for a while. And, you can allow your good philosophical premises take over. But in the long run, if you have a lot of bad philosophical premises, they will overcome the good one, and you'll not be able to write as well as you like. For example, I was raised Catholic. So instinctively and subconsciously, I still believe in the malevolent universe. You're going happily about your life, and then you're waiting for God to strike you. And, and you're doomed. Now, consciously, I don't believe in that. Consciously, I believe that the universe is neither malevolent or benevolent. And, if shit happens, Okay? There again, now see the malevolent universe is coming through. Shit happens. So I'm going to rephrase that. I believe that the world out there, you know, the world out there is dominated by by cause and effect. Is ran by cause and effect. I believe I have free will, and you know, I can choose my action. But I have to consciously actually remind myself of that. I can't just, you know, let my subconscious feed me whatever. I lapse into the malevolent universe, and it's very difficult to write, as we see later, you know. It's very difficult to write a plot if you think you are determined and you have no choice and no free will. The point is, if you know your philosophical premises, you have more control of what the subconscious will give you. So as a writer, you really know, I mean, you have to know that your subconscious will give you things according to your philosophy of life and to your philosophical value. And everything you write, everything an artist puts forward assumes a philosophical meaning. I give you an example now, a blatant example in painting, but you can, you know, translate it into writing. Let's say a painter paints a beautiful woman, then picks up the brush and paints an ugly pussy pimple on one of her lips. Now, an ugly pussy pimple in reality means nothing, you know. There are women with pussy pimple all the time, you know, it heals, it goes away, it doesn't mean anything. But if an artist puts a pussy pimple on the lip of a beautiful woman in a painting, that's the malevolent universe coming through. That means, you know, beauty is ephemeral. No matter how hard you try, you can't succeed. You know, there is no use. I mean, all these things as a feeling when you're looking at a painting just from a pimple. So every artist is really a moral philosopher, whether he likes it or not. And this philosophy of life comes out in these writings. So you better know, have an idea what your philosophical premises are. So now let's go to the literary premises. The literary premise is all the stuff that's packed in your subconscious. And the purpose, my purpose today, next. It's really to, go ahead, next. Is to just give you an indication of what may be, in quote, proper literary premises. And then, you know, when you know what they are, you can practice them consciously until they become subconscious, and then they're available for your inspiration. Next. So let's talk about the main tools for a writer, words. Words have an exact meaning. If you don't know the exact meaning of a word, you can't really communicate it and expect that the readers understand it. You should write like you write a legal document and still be able to convey passions, feelings, everything. Actually, it's the only way that you clearly can convey passion and feelings if you use the words exactly. Now, words are abstractions. Next. In reality, they're only concrete. There are no abstraction. In order to understand your words, you should try to concretize them. See how many concretes can you name for each word. Not all the words that you need, the word that you want to use in your writing. So if I say table, it's very easy because it's a very, very simple word. A table is an abstract word, but you can think of dozens of tables, different tables, as concrete. But try to do that with the words you use all the time when you write books. Try to do that with freedom, heroism, friendship, hate, justice, fear. How many concretes can you really name for each one of those words? So you should try to practice and see how many you can make, and then think of more and store them in your subconscious, because then those will be the examples that you concretize your characters, the feelings of your characters, their action, etc. You should try to hold those highly abstract concepts just like you hold the word table in your head, which is not easy to do. So these are your literary premises. You should try to build them as much as you can. And you also should try to store them in a way that then your subconscious can retrieve them easily. For example, when you look at the news and you see a firefighter that jumps into the flames to save someone, don't try to remember as a firefighter jumping in the flame to save something. Try to remember as an example of courage. You should have a folder in your mind under courage. You put that into the folder to retrieve it later. And you should look in your life in the news everywhere, books you read, for examples that you can now save. In that same folder, maybe you'll find that young Chinese person, in Tiananmen Square, in front of the tank. That's also an example of courage. So you just try to identify what the concretes have in common and save them that way so that then they're ready for you. Your mind is like a computer. What comes in, what you put in, then you can retrieve. If you don't put anything in it, then you're not going to find much when you need inspiration. Writing is a matter of premises. It's not a matter of innate talent. Almost anybody can be a writer if they're interested and willing in putting the work into it. It's a process, it's a very difficult process, but you just have to accumulate lots of examples under all these abstractions. So they're ready for you automatically when the subconscious needs to retrieve it. The inspiration will come to the extent of the knowledge you have stored in your subconscious. So concretize your word. Go ahead next. Now, the relationship of abstraction to concrete happens at all levels in the writing. When you compose a story, you start with an abstract idea. And then you have to go into your subconscious will feed you the concretes to concretize that idea. Now the reader does the opposite. It perceives the concretes you give him, and he arrives to the idea that you start off with. This is a deeper way of explaining, show, don't tell. You don't tell me that your hero is that your character are heroic. Give me the reason to believe that this man is heroic because he did Y and Z, not just because you're telling me. So, next, you have to, at all level, apply this virtuous circle. Next, just the next three. While you're writing the story, while you're writing each chapter, and while you're writing each paragraph, ask yourself, what is my central idea that I want to convey? And keep it in mind so that your subconscious can then find the right concretes to illustrate that idea. Next. So to show you how this applies to different parts of a novel, I'm going to talk about the theme and the plot. So the theme is your central idea, the central conflict. And that's what you have to concretize with the concretes in your subconscious. And what the concretization is the plot. Next. And the plot, the plot is a purposeful progression of events, and these events are concrete because abstraction don't act, so they're actions by man, and they all lead to the climax. Now, for example, let's take Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is let's see what is the theme of Gone with the Wind. It's the old South tradition versus the new South. And what is the concretization? The concretization is the story of Scarlett O'Hara and the two men she loves. Ashley represents the old South, and Rhett is the new tradition. Now Ashley loves her, and she loves Ashley, and Rhett loves her, but she doesn't love Ashley. So she loves a man that represents the Old South, but she is much more like Red, who represents the New South. So that is an incredible concretization of a theme by a plot. So you must consciously be aware of the theme while you write at all time. You have to keep the theme in mind, because the theme is the order that you give to your subconscious, the standard by which your subconscious picks concrete. Next. So let's talk about the plot a little bit. The plot is the most important part, is the story. And the plot is purposeful progression, means that the events are logically related by cause and effect, and they all add to the climax. So that there's a conflict, and that has to be resolved in the climax. But purposeful means that the man has set his own purpose, means that he has a power of choice, means that he has free will. And I say you can't write a plot unless you believe in free will, because if you don't believe in free will, there is no conflict, there is no choice, there is no purpose, and there is no plot. And, some of may disagree with me, but that's what I think is correct. Now, if you truly don't believe in free will, and the reader thinks that your characters have no power of choice and they cannot determine their fate, they cannot choose what to do, and if and when the reader will find himself in a similar situation, because that's why we read, to relate to ourselves, the story. If the reader believes that you couldn't really choose anything, you couldn't really do anything about it, the reader wouldn't give a damn, not going to give a damn about your characters. The book will not make any difference to the reader. Now, in order to concretize a conflict, you have to put obstacle, and you have to put as bad obstacle as the possible worst obstacle you can, because the better the conflict, the worse the obstacles, and the better is the story. And of course, you have to try to resolve them all in the climax. And the conflicts are conflicts of values. So just to give you, an example of a concretization of how you would concretize a theme. This was already done. It's a masterpiece. You try to see if you can guess the title. Let's say that you want to write an historical novel, and you're going to set it in the Middle Ages. Now you have nothing yet, right? So you need a conflict. So the Middle Ages is a very religious time, and so your main character may as well be a priest. So if a priest goes about, practicing his religion happily, really there is no conflict. So what's the worst thing that can happen to a priest? What I would say is falling in love, because sexual passion is prohibited by religion, and his values are in another dimension. So if he falls in love with somebody, it's really a value of this earth. So now the next question is, with whom? If he falls in love with a nun, it's not too bad, because, at least they have religion in common. But what if he falls in love? What's the worst thing that can happen? If somebody who's not religious, against everything he believes in, he falls in love with a gypsy. Now what is this gypsy loves him? Does she love him? She loves him, at least they got that, but she doesn't. She loves another man. She's afraid of the priest. And somebody actually defends her, and not just a nobody, but a protege of the priest defends her. Anybody knows what this story is? Well, it's the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So this is a masterpiece of how you could build a plot from a theme. And of course, it's easy to do for me now because I know the story. But obviously, it's very hard to do when you face a blank page. And, and your subconscious has to give you the concretes to go about with your story. So what you have to do is then, number one, you have to believe that conflict is essential. And number two, you have to know what is the nature of a conflict. With a lot of concrete examples in your subconscious, and you have to try to imagine, like when you go to the movies and they don't end the way you could end them. Okay, you can, yes. Next. Okay, now stop there, go back, and we can do that. So when you go to the movie and or you read a book and it kind of starts well and you don't like it, try to think what you could have done, for a better conflict. And that is, that you will expand and accumulate new premises in your subconscious that then you can retrieve. So you have to be absolutely clear about your theme. The theme is the purpose by which your subconscious will choose the concrete event. Go back a moment. I think I missed a slide. No. Okay, go ahead. So now we can see again. Okay, go next. Okay, this is good. So do not start writing unless you have the abstract theme. That's where you begin, where you start from. And then you have to have the climax. You have to know where you're going. Those two things, they have to be conscious in your mind before you start writing. It doesn't make any difference where, if you want to do an outline or if you want to start from the end or the beginning or the middle, but those two things should be in your mind. And most of all, the theme should be present in your mind at all steps, not just when you compile the story, but also when you write each chapter at all levels. That's the virtuous circle that I showed you before, going from abstract to concrete. And you have to be very clear about the theme, because the theme is the standard by which your subconscious is going to pick your concretes. Is going to pick the subconscious is, and you have to decide, what to include and what not to include, what's irrelevant. If you don't have the theme clear in your mind at all time, then the story will fall apart. You will get what we call a writer's block, because you will give your subconscious conflicting orders. You will start putting stuff in by association instead of cause and effect, with no integration to the central line. So the theme has to be crystal clear in your mind. So next. So now we can see, again, that sentence I put up in the beginning. What is inspiration? Is your subconscious summing up your premises and the goals that you have set yourself, which is the purpose. Next. The theme is the conscious purpose, the order you give to your subconscious. Next. And then the subconscious picks and chooses from your stored knowledge, from your premises, what you need to fulfill your inspiration. Next. Now I'm just going to go through briefly what did I do for my book? How did I apply this principle? How did I go from the first idea to next? The theme, the plot, and the climax. So my first idea came when I watched TV. There was a commercial about aspirin. And there was a man who got a card that says, your heart attack will arrive tomorrow. And then, of course, they said, it would be nice to know that that's happening so that you can take aspirin, So I said, well, that is a great idea for the beginning of a thriller. And there is a little conflict there, you don't want to have a heart attack and drop dead. Now you get a card that says you're going to have it. But it's not enough because, you have to pick important conflicts. You can't write a book about a conflict. I mean, whenever you choose, there is a conflict of values, But it can't be the choice between, vanilla and chocolate. You have to have a big conflict about life or death. So this is the beginning, but it wasn't a book yet. I had to really build the whole plot around this. And so I asked myself, like I did before, with the Hunchback of Notre Dame, what would make it worse than this? Well, what about many people get this card? But what is even worse than that? Well, what about if some of these people are in position that if something happens to them, a tremendous disaster is going to happen to everybody? Okay, well, that's a good conflict now. Now, that's the theme. well, what about the concretes? This book has a medical part and a political part. So the medical part was in my subconscious for the past 30 or 40 years of my practice. I didn't need to go and put new information there. But the political part was not there. If I had just started writing, I could have had a writer block right then and there because I really didn't know the political part. So I had to do a tremendous amount of research to put stuff into my subconscious so that then eventually I could go about and write a novel and get some inspiration, things to write about that. And of course I needed a climax. And the problem with the climax is that problem with writing a whole bunch of impossibly to solve problems for your characters, that then you have to solve them with the climax. You have to find out how to solve it. And that was hard. And, I thought about it a long, long time. And, like you wake up in the morning after months that you think about it and you know it. That's why we think it's a gift from God, But luck happens to the people who deserve it. You have to put stuff there. So finally I got it. And after that, writing was relatively easy and pretty much fun. But it took me a long time to get there. So next, just to conclude, the most important thing is to concretize your concept, your idea. All the ones you use in writing. Again, all the emotions, the actions, they have to be concretized. And you have to store into your subconscious consciously a whole bunch of examples so that they're available to you later. You have to learn how to shuttle back and forth from abstraction to concrete. So you can concretize an idea and you can give them an idea to actions, so you go from one to the other. So I have to give you an example, just took a moment to read you an example of an incredible concretization. And this is from the Hunchback of Notre Dame again. This is when the conflict of the priest between his religion and his sexual passion. So it says, from that day on, there was in me a man whom I did not know. I tried to use all my remedies, the cloister, the altar, the work, the book, folly. Do you know, young girl, what I always saw thenceforth between the book and me? Unable to get rid of it. Always hearing your song, humming in my head. Always seeing, and this is it, your feet dancing on my prayer book. I mean, these are 7 words that concretize the whole theme of the book. Wish I could write that way. In any case, so next, so you have to be clear about your theme and the climax. Next, and you have to think in terms of conflict. And you have to know what a conflict is and why is it necessary, and have examples in your mind. Next. And one more important thing, very more important thing, when you write something, tap your emotions. Your emotions are very important because don't think about your readers. Write what you care about. Be selfish. Because if you tap your emotion, you write something you really like and you really care about, there is a much higher chance you're going to have a lot of stuff in your subconscious that you can tap, for your inspiration. Next. Now, the most important thing, when you sit down, forget about everything you heard today, everything you read about it, everything. Now, if you've done your homework, your subconscious would write your story. Thank you. Next. And this is just a plug for my book. He hit, one time he hit #1 bestseller in political thriller and suspense in the Kindle version. So we will be selling book for $20, signed hard copies, which is 20 to 30% off, I think, the Amazon. So support your local author. Thank you.
How was I your assistant?
It was good,
Okay,
perfect.
yeah, all right.
Yeah, and you
Okay, I have a
actually,
new
you
job.
read my mind.
I have a new
You
job.
went, actually, you clicked when I didn't tell you. And you should have.
See,
Yeah.
I was the subconscious
Excellent,
thing. We
the
were
subconscious
connected.
thing,
Yeah.
that's right.
So does anybody, Christina's going to take a few questions. Does anybody have questions for her? Or are you still absorbing all of that?
Yes,
What do you mean by concretize? I understand the concept,
yeah,
but I'm not sure the meaning you're giving to it.
yes. So concretize means that you have to find what concrete actually makes you think of that idea. So you have the idea of Gone with the Wind. That is the Old South versus the New South, right? So the concrete is Scarlett O'Hara's story with the two men, etc. That's the concrete that shows you in action, illustrates in action the idea. But concretize happens at all levels. So, for example, when I say table is an abstract word, but you can think of dozens of different tables, with 3 legs, with 4 legs, round, square, a coffee table, a table you eat dinner on, etc. Those are the concretes in a very simple way. But then when you go to write books or when you go to high level, like I said, courage, it's very hard to think of concrete of courage. I mean, one would be that firefighter that runs into the flame and you store it so that when you need to illustrate courage in your books, then that's there in that folder. I don't know if does that answer? So it happens at all different levels. It's what you see in reality, because in reality there are no abstractions. There are no, you say, courage. There is no courage in reality. There are only courageous people. So those are the concretes. Yes?
So I have a question. So you lead a busy life. What inspired you to write the book and drove you to storytelling?
Well, actually, it was reading The Art of Fiction by Ayn Rand. I was doing internal medicine. I had almost like a midlife crisis. So I was trying to get into cardiology, while I was, just exploring different things, the interest, and I read that book, and I said maybe I should try. And of course, that's another story. But it wasn't. It took me a long time to actually, learn how to do it because I had no training, so I had a lot of help.
So I'm curious. You're very analytical. Seems like you have a very analytical mind. So did you have a story in mind that you said I have to learn how to tell, or was it I want to do this and I have to find the story I want to tell?
It was a little bit of both. I had to look for a story. I mean, I said that's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. You can make anything happen, and you're in your own world. And I figured my world would be the medical world, so I knew it was going to be, and then I love thrillers, so I knew it was going to be a medical thriller. I mean, there was nothing else for me. Like if I wanted to write, it would be medical thrillers. But then I have to think about it. What am I going to write about a little bit? So.
And are they a series or?
Yes, well, there is a sequel that might come out next year to this book. And I have 2 other ones already written in various stages of editing. But my publisher took 2 more books from me, so it's happening. The next one is called Art Condition. That's a sequel to Dissection.
I'm so interested in how your book has been received so well and been so successful. How did you go about marketing it? Because you're a physician, you're a writer. How did you get involved in the marketing part of this, or did your publisher take over? Or?
It was very hard. Some of it the publisher helped me, but not, some, but he couldn't possibly do everything. So I actually hired the publisher, and that helped. But the things that helped the most was word of mouth. So it's really up to the readers, and thank God for that. It's not up to the publishers or the agents. So the book is going to fly or fall according to whether the readers, it's up to you guys, and of course, all the readers. But it's hard. I mean, obviously I had my practice, so, my colleagues and my patients. I really went.
Did you sell a book to every one of your patients?
I tried. A lot of them. They were very supportive. They were very supportive, of course.
Nobody wanted to make you mad.
No, right. Well, they were very nice to me. Yeah. Some of them said, "Wow, I didn't know you had that in, Jesus, there were actually curses there and stuff, they were." Can you really say that, Dr. Riza? Because I go by, did you write that? Whoa. Because no. There is one guy who's an FBI agent who really curses. I mean, one of the reasons they rejected this book was there were too many curses. So, honest to God. So I went home. I said, I got that. So I just I actually searched all the words, starting with F and S, and I changed them all. And I sent the book back. I said, well, there's still so many curses. It turned out that this was a Christian person, whatever. I mean, editor or whatever. I mean, so I said, well, like what? Well, it said darn and hell. I mean, I said, oh my God, it's already emasculated, this book with this. Because some characters, it's not everybody. They has to say something,
Okay, we have a question, Jen. I just wondered, what do you do in preparation to write your books? Do you outline? Do you do extensive outline?
Yeah. I'm like in the middle of the pencil and the whatever, the outliners. I have to have, I always, even before I wrote this, I did this talk and everything, you must have the theme, you must have the central conflict, and I have to have the end. I kind of knew that. But in between, I do write a little bit of an outline, but not detailed. And I just let it come out, and then sometimes some dialogue occurs to me, and I dump it in, and so if you read my outline, you're not going to understand it really, It's like I'm the only one who understands my outline. But so I'm kind of in between. I don't do very detailed, chapter or paragraph or whatever. Yeah.
Do you think in English when you write?
Oh,
Or do you
yes,
think in Italian and have to translate?
No, can't do that, yeah. After a while, you dream in English and all that, And to be honest with you, I could write a book in Italian. I could, it would be difficult because, and right now, I had difficulty, my editor said, this book is a wonderful thriller and all that, but it sounds like a little bit like it was written by somebody that, his English is not, English is not your first word, your first language. And he had to change, the position, because even now, my husband is trying to correct my italics all the time.
Sounds like a dangerous job.
I know, right?
Are there words that you can only think of in Italian and can't think of English equivalents? Or
Sometimes there are colorful words that I have to, but in general, I'm much more comfortable with English because, I've been at it for I hate to tell you how many years. So, I was 26, so it's a lot. I spoke English a lot more, although the accent, never dies. But
Okay. Let's give her a round of applause.
thank you.
That's right. We have a lot of authors come in and speak, and they talk about their books and their writing process, but to actually have somebody sit down and take the time to think, to write it down and to think about it and present it in such a way that you can actually use it yourself is amazing and give you a different way to approach it. So we appreciate you being here and putting the time in for the presentation.